Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα σας. Ειδικό πρόγραμμα από το Ευρωπαϊκό Κοινοβούλιο και εδώ στο Στρασβούργο σήμερα. Σήμερα, κυρίες και κύριοι, έχουμε την ιδιαίτερη χαρά να έχουμε μια αποκλειστική συνέντευξη με τον Γενικό Διευθυντή του Ευρωπαϊκού Κοινοβουλίου. Πλέον σήμερα θα έχουμε την ευκαιρία να ακούσουμε από τον Mangold, ο οποίος είναι ο Γενικός Διευθυντής, είναι ο Διευθυντής για όλα την επικοινωνία του Ευρωπαϊκού Κοινοβουλίου και ίσως είναι η πρώτη φορά που ο κύριος Mangold θα μιλήσει σε κυπριακό τηλεοπτικό σταθμό και είναι πραγματικά με ιδιαίτερη τιμή που τον έχουμε μαζί μας σήμερα. Η συνέντευξη θα είναι στα αγγλικά και σίγουρα θα ακολουθήσουν και υπότιτλους στα ελληνικά, έτσι για να ευκολύνουμε και τους φίλους τηλεθεατές. Γι' αυτό θα προχωρήσουμε αμέσως να καλωσορίσουμε τον κύριο Mangold, ο οποίος είναι, όπως είπαμε, ο Γενικός Διευθυντής και θα είναι στα αγγλικά. It is a great honor and a great pleasure that today for CapitalTV we have the opportunity to meet the communications director, managing director of communications for the European Parliament, and amongst other titles that you have as well here in the European Parliament. And it's a great honor that you've accepted this kind invitation to be here today and to speak to the viewers in Cyprus and, of course, the internet. So it's a great honor and a pleasure to welcome today Mr. Mangold to CapitalTV. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for your interest in the European Parliament and my position. Thank you.
My first question is a very simple question. Who is the Director General of Communications of the European Parliament? A little bit about yourself, sir.
Yeah, so I'm actually from Bavaria, the southern part of Germany, and I grew up there on the countryside, but I always thought I have to go outside in this world. And when I was a student in Strasbourg, I had the chance to work for a member of the European Parliament next to my studies. So each month, 3 days, I was working in the European Parliament in these premises, dealing with visitors groups. And that moment, the virus caught me, the virus about European integration, about this project. And since then, I'm interested and I'm motivated to work for the European project. And in '97, I came then to Brussels to work in the institutions. The last century,
Wow.
Yeah, the Parliament was a different place at that time. We didn't have internet. Yeah, we didn't have mobile phones, so the world was different at that time. And then I had all kinds of functions in this Parliament, in all kinds of departments. And now since the beginning of last year, I'm Director General for Communication.
Well, and as you've mentioned, Director General of Communication, what are the primary duties of a Director General of Communications for the European Parliament?
Actually, at this level, you are at the juncture of the top level of political and administrative decision making, and I think this defines also the main duties. So I have to make sure that DG Com is delivering on its mission. And this means we have to amplify what the Parliament says, what it decides, into all 27 member states and even beyond. We have to connect the Parliament with its members and the members of the Parliament with the public. And we have to also provide accessible and trustworthy information, because in these days, trust is the currency of successful communication. And more content-wise, we have 3 pillars. So we communicate about what this Parliament is. So that's the whole educational part. So it's also the visitors part. Last year we had a new record, 2.1 million visitors.
Wow.
In our premises, Brussels, Strasbourg, and in the member states. We explain to the visitors what the Parliament is, how the European Union functions. We have also a lot of programs with young people. For example, we have the European Ambassador School Program. We have 2,300 schools across Europe, and I think in Cyprus 60% of secondary schools are in these schemes, where we also explain what the Parliament is doing and the importance of European decision making, also providing space for members in the schools. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is what the Parliament does. That's the core business of Parliament. it's about legislation, it's about the budget. Tomorrow we vote on the next long-term budget in Brussels, in Strasbourg here. And it's about scrutiny. And this is the main work of our media colleagues. So we have press officers in Brussels with the correspondence of the media in Brussels. We have press officers in the member states who relate with the national press and the media. We have also a lot of information, of course, in social media. And the third pillar is what the European Parliament stands for. And that's the whole area of values. So we have, for example, the Sakharov Prize, Freedom of Thought, that we promote every year. This is a Parliament's prize. We have the Daphne Caruana Galizia Prize, which is about investigative journalism. So it's about gender equality, for example, it's about rule of law, human rights, and more and more also we have to communicate about the value of democracy also. So that's a bit the basic duties that I have in the content-wise. And then, of course, there's the whole management part. So I have to prepare the budget. I defend it with the Secretary General. I have to go to the Budgets Committee to defend my budget for every year. And this budget, of course, is based on data, on return on investment. So we have a large data analysis exercise so that I can also justify our expenditure. Then the human resources part, I would like to have our DG being attractive DG, to keep talent, to attract talent. And we have a competition also with other Director Generals and with the Commission, for example. And then we have also a collective decision-making function. This morning I was sitting with the Secretary General and the other Director Generals, and we discussed an updating of our current teleworking rules. So that's also part of these duties. And then I also think my duty is to inject a certain culture into this DG, and there are two main elements. One is service culture, so we are here also to serve the members and to help them in communicating. And then I have a hobby horse, which is a Japanese expression. It's called kaizen. It was very fashionable last century in the 80s in Japan. And it's a very basic approach, actually, consisting of three elements. So one is there should be a permanent drive for improvement of an organization. It should be permanent. It should be in all areas of the organization. So we have to always look at all areas where we can further improve. And this drive should be done and should be the responsibility of every colleague in the organization, not only management, not only the Director General. So I think these are the main parts. And then, of course, accessory to this, I'm participating in the governing bodies of the Parliament. I have to advise the President also on communication. I meet a lot of members because they have ideas what we could do in terms of communication, or they have complaints. Yeah, I meet journalists, stakeholders. I give speeches. This Monday I had a speech with 300 teachers in Brussels. Last 2 weeks ago I was at the International Journalism Festival. I was sitting in the panel. I do a lot of reading, mostly at the weekends, because communication is evolving very fast. So I have to be ahead of the curve. And I think that's mainly the duties of a Director General for communication.
And would you say that the challenges that you face are as equal as the duties you have in terms of day-to-day challenges, in terms of as a Director General of Communications, and to focus on specific issues in terms of challenges?
Yes. I would say there are, let's say, two parts of challenges. I mean, one is related to the political constellation we are operating in. So we as DG Com, we are there to support the members, the groups, and the President to communicate. If you have 720 members, they have all different views about how to communicate, yeah, and different ideas how we can support them. So that's already a challenge in itself. For example, my counterpart in the Commission is mainly working for the President of the Commission. We are working for all members, and then in the relation to this, of course, is the institutional communication, which is our own communication on behalf of the institution. This is about branding of the European Parliament. This is mainly an exercise around European elections. And sometimes there can also be difficulties because we communicate about the results, the decisions of this Parliament. But when you have a tight vote, then you have a lot of members who are not happy about the result. And they're not happy about that we communicate about this result, but that's our duty to result about the votes that we have in this parliament. And then the second part is about communication. So, and specifically in the European Parliament, we have to communicate to all European citizens. This means we have to make sure that we have a fully fledged multilingualism. 24 plus languages we communicate. And I call it always even different. I speak about a multidimensional multilingualism because we have to adapt our language to the audience. For example, visitors groups. We have lecturers to the visitors groups. You have to adapt the content and the way how you speak depending on the visitors. You cannot speak in the same way to school kids as you speak to elderly people or young professionals. So you have to adapt the content and the way you speak, the type of language you use to the audience. And I think this is a particular challenge also for us. And we have always to keep in mind that we need to look at what is the audience and how we can address this audience in the best possible way. It's also a challenge, by the way, for all kinds of communication organizations, that we need to value distribution over production. Meaning, there are a lot of ideas what we can do, what videos we can produce on that and that issue. But first, there should be a reflection about who is the audience, what is the channel, and then only production. Yeah? And maybe the last challenge, which is also quite frustrating for me and many colleagues, is that we have, of course, limited resources.
Of course.
We are supposed to communicate to 440 million citizens, and this is not possible with the resources we have. There are endless ideas. We could endlessly use resources. So we have to always judge, is this activity worthwhile, based on data, based on return on investment. We have to explain also to the members, where we have an added value, SDG communication, and where we make the difference also in terms of communication with media and with citizens. So there are a lot of challenges also ahead, of course, in this department because of the specific situation in the European Parliament.
You've given us the best possible pass, like a solid midfielder would do to a striker, and then you had the striker to go for goal. You've given me a pass in terms of speaking about the way technology has changed.
Yeah.
In your opening remark, you mentioned when you started work in the mid-90s and how technology has progressed.
Yes.
And it gives me a great opportunity to follow on to our next question, which I feel that it's a rhythm and it all rhymes extremely well, is the interaction between the European Parliament and the social media. Because now we live in an age where social media, like it or not, and I'm sure we all like it,
yeah.
It's an A to Z of our day-to-day activities, our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely.
We've got social media everywhere.
Yeah.
Does the European Parliament use the facilities of social media to try and interact with our European citizens across the continent?
We have to, of course. Our principle is we are where people are. And that's why the Parliament was one of the first institutions that opened social media accounts on platforms. We want to provide accessible, trustworthy, positive information about this Parliament. And we have a considerable operation in terms of social media. Now we are present in 13 platforms. We have more than 200 accounts in all languages.
Wow.
At headquarters, but also in the liaison offices in the member states. Around about 9.5 million followers combined, but this is not the key performance indicator. The performance indicator is engagement. So we measure how much people like, share, click our content, and there we have a composite index, and last year we had 464 million engagements with our content by European citizens. So that's a bit the frame of this. And as you said, it's fast developing. So there's a constant adaptation of our presence on social media. It's like a portfolio management. So we invest more in one platform and less in another platform. We see how they perform with our content. We have to adapt to new developments in these platforms. And we have to adapt our content to each platform specifically. Because the length of videos, for example, is different in different types of platforms. so that our content can also be performing. And that's is a permanent process. Yeah, and then around this presence in social media, we have also developed other activities. For example, every year now we invite content creators.
The influencers.
Influencers.
That's the right word.
Because that's a new feature also.
Yes,
you know, more and more communication, more and more news also are consumed by citizens with influencers, so-called news creators or news influencers. Yeah. So we invite more than 100 of them every year to a summit to Brussels so that they can interact with each other because they're from different member states. They interact with us, so we learn, they learn, and it's a very useful exercise for both sides. We organize so-called social media days where we invite the platforms to come to the parliament, platform representatives to meet in bigger sessions, but also one-to-one sessions, members and their collaborators, so that they can also learn the latest trends. We offer training to members in terms of social media presence, so that they can tell us what they would like to improve, and we try to help them also to improve their presence. We invite on a regular basis content creators also to our plenary sessions. And by the way, we are the only institution that is active on TikTok, because we thought it would be necessary and important, in particular for the last European elections, where we had a lowering of the voting age in several member states, to be in this platform because the youngsters are particular there.
It gives me an opportunity to ask you a question on how do you handle, how does the European Parliament handle, because now we've, like we said, we've progressed to the social media era. Yeah. It's an era which has come from and has exploded in our day-to-day lives. And like you've mentioned, with so many different accounts and interacting with so many European citizens, obviously we cannot please everyone. There will always be some negative press. Yeah. I will follow on a question a bit later on fake press and how the European Parliament tackles fake press, because it could help us in our day-to-day activities as well, when you know something is completely fake. But when you have negative press and social media, and like we said, from the time that one piece of information is out there, context on the media platform, then it's really hard to control. And if it becomes viral, then obviously things do get slightly out of hand. Yeah. How do you tackle the negative press on for the European Parliament?
Yes, I mean, negative or press or criticism, I think, is normal in a democracy. I mean, there is an exchange, different opinions. There can be also things that don't work perfectly, and they have to be addressed. So I think it's very important for a democracy to have a robust discussion. But of course, there are certain limits in terms of hate speech.
Of course, absolutely.
And this should also be fact-based, these discussions. Huh? So that's the first point. And in our relation with media, be it at headquarters, but also in the member states, a very important principle for us is that we do not spin, we inform. We try really to make sure that what we give as information is trustworthy, and journalists can also trust this information. And then media does its job. Media, free and quality media, is important for a vibrant democracy, and this also includes, of course, criticism. Yes. Yeah. In terms of social media, we have on 8 platforms we have a moderation policy, 24/7 days. It's all around the clock, to make sure that the comment space in this 8 platform is also clean, is a respectful place.
And within the law.
Is a place where we can have a safe interaction and people are not bullied. Yeah. And also where we can show that we as Parliament, we are reactive. Absolutely. We are interacting with citizens when they have comments, and in particular constructive comments. This allows us also, of course, to have an insight in what kind of topics, narratives are developing. And also, this is for us an early warning system about disinformation-driven content that's on the web. So that's a bit our approach to negative views.
Negative. Yeah. And obviously, after the negative press, which, like you said, in a democracy, it's always welcome, because it helps many institutions and many people improve on their work when they see the immediate feedback from the general public. But there's a difference with negative press, which is completely respectful and it's there, with fake press. A fake press is a major problem in the institutions and across our day-to-day activities. And the way that they focus on specific issues where it's not real, it's fake. That's why we call it fake. How does the European Parliament even try to tackle such fake stories out there that have absolutely no content whatsoever in terms of the Parliament itself? But it's there, and you could see a fake story increasing itself and getting more shares and going more viral in terms of the target audience it's receiving. And you know, as a communications director, that this is fake. This is not true. What do you do? How do you handle this?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. And of course, also, you know, in terms of discussions inside the DG and with members, we have more and more discussions about this. So we recently have adopted a strategy, and this is based on 4 pillars. So the first pillar is intelligence, that we identify, in particular, manipulation from outside the European Union.
Which could also be political, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always political, and it's also very often related to elections. But you know, in our business, it's a daily concern that we have. So intelligence is very important to identify the tactics, the way how these operations are organized, and also to be fast. And this we do inside the European Parliament. We have a task force that also includes our colleagues from the IT department, because it's very often linked to cybersecurity. And when members are attacked by these actors, sometimes it's also a security issue. So we also have DG Safe, our security department, part of it. Then we have a cooperation between the institutions. In particular, the External Action Service has developed an expertise for this kind of attacks. And recently, also with this new Center for Democratic Resilience, the member states are coming into this game because they have a lot of information, and very often it starts in one member state and it spreads over in other member states. So we try to become better also in terms of intelligence. So that's the first thing. And once you are better there, of course, then you can start to pre-punk. For example, pre-punking means we know that something is going on, something is coming, and we get out proactively with messaging, with information about this topic. And this, by the way, worked also well in Moldavia in the election there. Yes. So that's one element that is more effective if you have good intelligence beforehand. Then, of course, once disinformation is out there, to debunk this is very difficult. When it is media, for example, we try to contact with the media. We try to explain them that this is objectively wrong information, and if they could rectify this. We have also more and more cases, for example, of impersonation, meaning, for example, somebody is setting up an account that is called like the president with a photo of the president, but it's not the president.
Not the president.
So there we analyze the situation, we try to be fast, we talk with the platform so that this account is taken down. So there are all kinds of activities also in that area, but I think the most important area for us is prevention, in the sense that we have to work on resilience, on media literacy, that citizens, also members, staff, they identify this information, they can handle this. So we have a handbook, we have games, we have exhibitions, we work in the member states, we work with the schools, I explained to you, also the trainings of colleagues and members, so that the whole society becomes more resilient and, as I say, a better capacity to identify disinformation as disinformation. And I think in this area we have developed further. And we see already results also in our surveys that young people tell us, yes, I'm able to identify disinformation and I can react, and I can also then check trustworthy sources if this information is correct or not.
It's you reminded me of an ex-colleague of mine 30-odd years ago, who said to me a quote, and I have it as in my day-to-day activities, that prevention
Yeah.
It's better to prevent a problem, like you mentioned,
Absolutely.
than having the trouble of trying to cure the problem.
Absolutely.
So that's why
Absolutely.
it's relevant even
Yes.
after 30 odd years.
Yes.
I remember the same quote.
Yes. For us, it's really mainstream right
Yeah,
now in
yeah.
all areas. For example, the House of European History
Yeah.
2 years ago has set up a temporary exhibition which was called Fake for Real.
Like for real.
And they identified this idea, this problem about disinformation over the last centuries. It's fascinating. You know, it's not new, disinformation. The means have changed, the channels have changed. But the intent of somebody to seem misinformation or disinformation, to seem confusion in a society and indifference and harm democracy, this is not new. This is very old.
We have a final question that I think is relevant. We have almost 450 million European citizens. They've started to learn the institutions extremely well. Some countries have tried even better, improving and acknowledging what the European Union does on a day-to-day basis in terms of all the institutions. But as we are in the European Parliament, how important is the European Parliament in our day-to-day life? For example, I'm a journalist and I live in Cyprus, or other journalists across the whole of the European Union, or a plumber, or an electrician, or someone that's any type of business in the European Union, in a big family.
Yes.
How important is the European Parliament in our day-to-day life, sir?
I would say it's very important. The thing is, of course, to identify this and to explain it also to citizens and to have examples also for that. Huh? Because very often what the Parliament decides is then put into the national legislation via the national Parliament. Yeah? And then, of course, it disappears somehow. So it's very difficult to make a distinction between European legislation and national legislation. Yeah? So that's the first thing, I think, to make it visible how big is actually the impact of European decision-making at the level of the member states. Yes, and there we have a very good example, a good project in Spain, where we work together with the national parliament in Spain, where we identify each piece of legislation, what is the origin. And there's an annual report, and the last term we had 53% of national legislation that was implementing European legislation or recommendations of the European level. Yeah, 53%. Wow. Yeah. So that's, I think, the first thing to make it visible that European legislation and national legislation, in the end, it's one big pot that is, of course, shaping people's lives. Yeah. Then, of course, you have to look at the different examples, there, Parliament is often also the driving force. We initiate legislation. We ask the Commission to come forward with legislation. That was the case for the AI Act, for example. Yeah. Or recently we have a proposal on the table to oblige trainees to be paid, because we have a lot of free of cost traineeships in Europe, and people are exploited very often. Yeah, so that they get a decent pay also for the trainees, young people. Yeah. We had recently a decision about GROG, I mean this application that that can nullify people, and the Parliament said we have to forbid this. This is not really in line with our values. So it depends a bit also on what kind of decisions we are talking about. If it's about consumer rights, the common charger is a very visible example, yeah, or labeling of products, yeah, or minimum guarantee for products that are bought on digital market platforms like Amazon. So these are quite clear examples. But of course, there are also decisions that are directed to economic operators. For example, when banks have to foresee a bigger capital buffer to be more resilient in terms of crisis, to avoid the next banking crisis, it's also a decision. Of course, that's not visible for citizens, but it protects the savings of citizens. Yeah. We have decisions also that are directed to specific groups of citizens, for example, farmers. Yeah, but this can also have an impact on food security, food quality. So the thing is to identify this and make it visible for citizens where we have a real impact. For example, also natural disasters. There is a fund. Parliament is on very fast also to authorize budget to help citizens that have suffered natural disasters so that money can flow very fast. But this is a very tiny part of the population that will get the money and is benefiting from this. But for them, it's very important. Maybe last point, we see also more and more that citizens are aware of this, that decisions at the European level in the European Parliament impact their daily life. And the last Eurobarometer, we have a result of 70% of citizens who say that they understand, they recognize that decisions of the European level have an impact on their daily life. And that's a quite big figure, I would say.
Wow. Well, after such a wonderful interview and closing remarks, I'm not sure if there is something you would like to add before we conclude this program. After having, I will take the opportunity, as our viewers are watching now, to thank them as well for their time listening to us and listening, because it's a very interesting aspect that we've taken. We've taken a specific road today for the communications.
Yeah.
We'll have the opportunity in the future to engage in other platforms as well in terms of the whole situation. Is there something that you would like to add before I close the program?
Maybe just to say that Europe is all of us. Yeah. It's not the institutions, it's not Brussels. We are all Europeans and we are all part of this community. And sometimes even smaller member states have bigger contributions to the European project, as we see now also with the Cyprus presidency. And everybody can bring something specific on the table. And I think that's the beauty of this project.
Yes, absolutely.
That's unity in diversity. Yes. And that makes us together much stronger than other parts of the world. And I think that's important, that we preserve this European way of life. And I think it's becoming more clear that Europe is a very good place to live in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian Mangold, Director General for the Communications for the European Parliament. It was a great honor and a great pleasure. And once again, allow me to express my gratitude to your good self and to your office for giving us the opportunity to have an interview first time for CapitalTV. I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to speak on any other Cypriot media before, but it's a great opportunity. And thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to explain to our viewers as well what do you do here and how important social media is, and also other aspects of communication in our day-to-day life. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, έχουμε παρακολουθήσει μια διάσκεψη εδώ, μια συνέντευξη από τον Γενικό Διευθυντή, υπεύθυνος βέβαια για όλα τα μέσα, ο Διευθυντής εδώ στο Ευρωπαϊκό Κοινοβούλιο, που είναι υπεύθυνος για τα communications, την καθημερινότητα των πολιτών, αυτά που βλέπουμε στο διαδίκτυο και αυτά που κάνουν και εδώ στο Ευρωπαϊκό Κοινοβούλιο. Τέλος, θα ήθελα να σας ευχαριστήσω και για τον χρόνο σας και εύχομαι ό,τι το καλύτερο. Ευχαριστώ και σίγουρα θα έχουμε την ευκαιρία εκ νέου να τα ξαναπούμε.